Hello and welcome to the Salesforce Admins webinar, Advanced Automation with Flows and Custom Metadata Types. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mark Baseman and I'm an admin evangelist with Salesforce. With me today is Jen Lee, Senior Salesforce Business Consultant at John Hancock. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Mark.
Jen is sitting next to me here in Boston. It wouldn't be a Salesforce Admins webinar without our forward-looking statement. Please note that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and you should make buying decisions only on the products and services that are currently available. You can find us on all the social things, and you should. We are on Twitter at Salesforce Admins No I, and you can connect with us. If you want to connect with other awesome admins, you can use the hashtag AwesomeAdmin. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as Salesforce Admins. And of course, our website, admin.salesforce.com, has webinars, podcasts, blog posts, and all sorts of other great stuff. So please check that out. Yes, this webinar is being recorded. The video will be posted to YouTube, and the webinar recap page with the slides will be at this bit.ly URL. The webinar recording takes a little bit to go up, so it won't be live immediately afterwards, but should hopefully be up in the next day or two. If you have questions, please join the admin webinar group in the Trailblazer community. There you'll find links to all the past webinars, and we'll be in the group throughout the webinar today to try to answer questions. Time permitting, we will also try to answer your questions live at the end of this webinar, but if we don't get to it, we will be in the community doing our best to answer all your questions there. So join the admin webinar group in the Trailblazer community. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about an overview of automation and custom metadata types. We're going to talk about automating a public group assignment use case. Jen is going to do an amazing live demo. We're going to share some resources for you to follow up on after the webinar. And again, time permitting, we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So let's go.
All righty. So I'm Jennifer Lee. I'm a Senior Salesforce Business Consultant at John Hancock. I'm also a 3-time MVP. I blog about Salesforce at jendavidlee.wordpress.com, where I post a lot of how-tos on Process Builder and Flow, and also summaries on the upcoming Salesforce releases. I'm the co-host of Automation Hour, which I'll talk about towards the end, graduate of Rad Woman, which is Learning Development 10-week free course. I'm a 4-time Trailhead Ranger. I've spoken at multiple Salesforce and community events, including Dreamforce, and I'm the social media manager for Women in Tech Diversity.
Okay, we get it, Jen. You're awesome.
All right, so at the end of this webinar, we'll be able to level up on your awesome admin toolkit. You'll understand what a custom metadata type is, the benefits of it, and why as an admin you should use it in your configuration. You'll also learn how to reference custom metadata type in Cloud Flow Designer, which is a tool that you use to create flows. And lastly, learn how to invoke a flow from a process.
I want to be clear, this is an advanced admin webinar. So if you are not familiar with flows, for instance, we'll give you some resources to follow up on, but we're going to take this pretty quickly and we're going to assume that you are intermediate to advanced. So again, if you're a beginner or beginner to intermediate, this may not be the best webinar for you to start with. Just saying that out front.
Alrighty, so now we're going to jump into the overview of automation and custom metadata types. So Lightning Flow is the product that offers declarative process automation using 2 tools, Process Builder and Cloud Flow Designer. We're going to focus a lot of our attention on the flow piece. So Cloud Flow Designer allows you to build flows. So some of the use cases for flows is if you have business processes that require inputs from internal community users, or you have a guided wizard that you like to your users to go through. You want to add some type of automation to your pages and apps, or set up automated tasks and processes. And then lastly, Flow allows you to build something once and reuse it multiple times. So over to the right in the screenshot is the Cloud Flow Designer. And we have the canvas that has the flow that we're going to step through in a little bit. And then we have these tabs here. The palette allows you to drag and drop things like decisions, record lookups, screens. Resources allow you to set variables, which we'll talk about in the next slide. And then Explorer is everything you've configured in your flow. All right, so variables. So Mark mentioned this is an intermediate or advanced topic, but if you're out there and you're new and you don't really know what variables are, they're important to Flow. So a flow has to have at least one variable. And think of it as a food container that holds a value that at some point you're going to interact with in your flow. So there are 4 different variables. There's a variable that holds a single value. Collection variable holds multiple updated values of the same data type, so such as a group of email addresses. S-object variable brings back a whole entire Salesforce record and all the fields associated with it so that you can use it. And S-object collection variable brings back 1 or more Salesforce records. All the fields are available for use. All right, so now what is a custom metadata type? So traditionally, developers or ISVs have used custom metadata types to customize, deploy, and package or upgrade their application metadata. So if you have taken an app and installed it off the App Exchange, chances are they might have a custom metadata in there for their application information. So the key takeaways is custom metadata types allow you to define your application or your org's metadata. A custom metadata type can reference another custom metadata type. For the developers out there, it replaces the custom settings list. And you could reference custom metadata types in code, flow, and with Summer 18 validation rules. Now I'm going to make a forward-looking statement here.
Okay, you will.
So I posted this idea on the Idea Exchange. So the team delivered custom metadata type on validation rules. Formulas is coming in winter 19. It's already in the preview org, but I've taken a quick look at it, so I'm really excited for that. And then Vlad has promised that it will come in Process Builder in a future release.
And Vlad is the product manager for this feature.
Correct.
Great.
So for those of you out there, I'm assuming everyone has created a custom object. So custom metadata type looks very similar to custom object. So that's the position custom object that I have in the background there. So custom metadata type has standard fields. You have custom fields. You could put in validation rules and organize the page layout. So it doesn't have necessarily all the fixings that you have with a custom object, but it looks like very similar to that. So now you're wondering, what's the difference between the two, right? So custom object, as you know, stores business customer information. So based on your industry, it might be storing sales, properties, donations, applications. The records are data, which means it's not deployable. So when you do a refresh from production, excluding your full copy sandbox, or you do a sandbox creation, those data records aren't going to come down. You have to data load them in. People access the custom object via a tab, and those users interact with the custom object records, and that ends with __C. Custom metadata type, on the other hand, stores your application or org information. So this might be IDs, instructional text, mapping. The cool thing about custom metadata type is the record is metadata, which means it's deployable. So you could put it in a chain set and move up your sandboxes up to production. When you do a refresh, all the data records come down. Same thing as when you create a new sandbox. So you access the data records via setup, and it's really the org or the app that interacts with the custom metadata type records. and it ends with __MDT. So when should you use it? Again, if you're referencing application or org data that in multiple components in your org, so you might have something that you're pulling from code as well as flow, you want to manage it in one location and not have to repeat it in all the places. If you're managing mapping, such as a state to a tax rate mapping, or you're managing information that's subject to change, again, you don't want to hard code that information in code or flow, because if you need to change it, then you're making changes in a new version of your code or flow. You can also store application data of a similar structure, such as chatter messages or task information if you're creating multiple tasks. And also you can store environment variables. So if there are information like URLs that you were referencing in a sandbox that might be different in production, you can use custom metadata types of items. All right, so where do you find it? In setup, in Classic, you would go under Develop, Custom Metadata Types. In Lightning, it's under Custom Code, Custom Metadata Types. When in doubt, use the quick find. So in Flow, which we're going to cover off, not validation rules, in Flow, you do a record lookup for your custom metadata type. And when you deploy, this was a tricky one when custom metadata types first came out for me. You naturally would want to look for it under a component called custom metadata type, like you would custom object. It doesn't work that way for custom metadata type. So if I named the custom metadata type Gen, in my list of components, I would look for Gen. And then once I find Gen, I will find all the associated data records with that. All right, now moving on to automating a public group assignment use case. So here's our challenge. We want to automatically assign users of a specific profile to specific groups. So right now, the group assignment is done manually. So as you know, as a result, people are sometimes added or not removed from the appropriate public groups. How this could become a problem is if you're using public groups for security reasons to give access to reports or dashboards or specific queues. If a person doesn't have the access, they can't do their job, right, or access the data. Or if you leave someone in a group they shouldn't have access to, that could cause security issues as well. So what we want to do is automate that for our users. So once a user is assigned to a profile, we'll automatically, based on the mapping, assign them to the appropriate public group. And we want to avoid hard coding IDs, because that's a bad practice. So we're not going to put that in our flow or process builder. We're going to update it in custom metadata type outside. So the components that we have are custom metadata type, flow, process builder, public groups, and a custom object, a user object custom formula field that will pull the profile name. So what's a public group? So it's essentially a collection of individual users, groups, roles and the subordinates. And again, you use it for security reasons to give people access to reports, dashboards, or a queue or specific functions. So the data schema for a public group is you have the group, which stores the information about the overall group. So that here's the group name. And then you have a user, and then there's a junction object in between called group member, and that stores which user is associated with which group. So that's important for when we go through our flow. Okay, so here's the process that we're going to automate. So it's two processes. So over to the left, when a user is created, based on that user's profile, we're going to look at a mapping and then determine what public group that user should be assigned to. And then the last step is to assign the user to that public group. The other process over to the right is when there's an existing user and that user's profile has changed. Then what we want to do is remove the user from the public group that was associated with the previous profile, right? We don't want to give that person access still. And then, based on the user's new profile, we're going to determine which public group that person should be assigned to, and then lastly, assign the user to the public group. So the first two steps, users created, users profiles changed, will be handled via Process Builder. And the rest of the steps will be handled via Flow. And custom metadata type will interact with the flow. So we have two custom metadata types. The first one on the top screenshot is the mapping between the profiles and the public group. So we have apple, banana, and cantaloupe that we're going to assign. And the second screenshot shows the public groups apple, banana, and cantaloupe and the ID. So we're managing the IDs outside of Flow. Okay, so again, what we're planning on doing today is to automate the process of users' assignment to public groups based on the profile, that profile mapping. So our components again here are custom metadata type, flow, process builder, public group, and a user object custom formula field.
All right, I want to see it. Let's see it.
All right. And I'm going to click over here. All right, we're going to go into public group reference. And again, this looks very similar to a custom object. And here I created 3 fields for apple, banana, and cantaloupe, and this will store the IDs for the public group.
I noticed you're storing the 18-character ID.
Yes.
Great.
It's always safe to store the 18-character ID. So here in my data record, I have the public group apple, banana, and cantaloupe, and this is the ID. So if I hop over to the public group apple, and I'm going to highlight the URL, that's where I'm getting the ID to pop into my record over here. So the other custom metadata type is the profile to public group assignment. So think back to the Excel spreadsheet where I have the profile and then which public group it assigns to. So down here for my custom fields, here I'm using checkboxes for the public group apple, banana, and cantaloupe. And when I go here and click here to get to the data record, here's my setup for the profile and then which public group it assigns to. So here, for example, I have profile A, and it's assigned to public group apple. Profile B is assigned to public group cantaloupe. All right, so now we're going to go into Flow. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to open up Cloudflow Designer. There it goes.
I'll make a forward-looking statement while this is loading. There is a new flow builder on the way, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I suspect it will make some sort of announcements, maybe at Dreamforce, maybe not, but I know that there will be a new Cloudflow Designer, which will not use Adobe.
All right, so our first step here is to do a record lookup on the custom metadata type. And here, we're pulling the public group reference, custom metadata type, remember, __MDT. And we're pulling back that one record that I was showing you with the IDs. And then based on that, we have the apple, banana, and cantaloupe fields. So those were the text fields, and we're storing it into 3 separate variables. Then we're doing a record lookup. And this is going to be on the group member object. Remember that junction object for the public groups. So here we have the 3 IDs. So this is the apple, banana, and cantaloupe Salesforce IDs with the current user. And that we will pass over from Process Builder, which we'll go over in the next step. And then once I do the query, I'm going to take whatever group ID and store it in another variable. Then I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to determine whether a public group is found. So this is that scenario where we have an existing user and we change their profile, right? So here we're looking at the variable from our last step. Is null false? Two negatives make a positive, so that means there is a public group that was found, and the default is no public group found. So assuming there was a public group found, we're going to do a record delete. And this is a function that Process Builder and Workflow Rules does not have, that is unique to Flow, is the ability to delete records. So here we're going to take a look at the group members. So again, that's that junction object, right, for public groups. And we have the group ID and the user. So we're removing that user from their previously assigned public group. So then it's going to go into the next step, or if we didn't find a public group, so in the case of a new user being created, they're not assigned a public group, we're going to look at the other custom metadata type that we just showed not too long ago. It's the profile to public group assignment, __MVP. So here we're going to look up the variable profile name. So in Process Builder, we're going to cover off on that custom formula field for the profile name. So based on that, we're looking up the profile name, and we're taking the data records, and these are those checkboxes, and we're storing them in separate variables. And then lastly, we're going to do a record create. Again, on the group member junction object, where we're taking the ID and then the user. So we're assigning it to that public group. So that's the flow piece. Now we're going to move over to Process Builder. So we have our process firing off when a record changes, and it's on the user object when a record is created or edited. We only have one criteria node here called new or profile changed. And here you have the option of setting your conditions point and click. However, I am using the formula, and the reason being is I want it to fire off on when a record is new. And the only way that you can do it is via a formula. So the syntax here is new, open paren, close paren, or, and in this example I'm using 2 pipes, or the user's profile is changed. Then I have an immediate action that will fire off that flow that we just took a look at and pass over 2 variables as inputs into that flow. So we have the var current user ID, and this will pass over the user ID that started the flow, and then this variable profile name. So this is that custom formula field for profile name based on the user's profile ID.
And you didn't put the ID in there, which you could have done, right?
So sometimes Process Builder is finicky in terms of the levels down that it could pull information from. So for a new user, when the user is created and you have a profile in the record, it takes, there is some lag time, like a couple seconds before the profile name is set. So Process Builder goes and tries to look for the profile name. Oh, it's not there, and then you get a Process Builder error. So the workaround here was to use the formula field.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. So lastly, we're going to test this out, right? So now we have Sally Sunshine. She's assigned to profile A. I'm going to go back to this mapping to remind you. Profile C, right now she doesn't have any public groups, but we're going to assign her to profile A. So she should get the public group Apple. So if I did this right, that should be the end result. Go A, hit save, and we should see that she's assigned to the correct public group. There you go. So if we're going to change her profile, and let's say we're going to change her to profile C, that should also change the group. And it should remove her from her previous public group. So she should not be assigned to Apple anymore. So Apple is gone, and now she's assigned to Banana. And that's our use case.
Awesome. Jen, can you share some resources with us? And hopefully we'll have time for a very quick Q&A.
So speed it up. All right, so I'm very excited to be presenting at Dreamforce for the 3rd year in a row. I'm speaking at 2 admin breakouts. For those of you who want to learn more about Flow, especially beginner's Flow, it's attend this Today's the Day, Conquer Your Fear of Flow. And the other one, if you want to learn more use cases for custom metadata types, I'm presenting with the awesome MVP Shel Feldman and community member Stuart McNaught. Reveal your inner trailblazer with custom metadata types. And Automation Hour, I co-host that with 2 other MVPs. We meet every other Friday, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't heard of us, go out to our YouTube channel at bit.ly/automationhourvideos. What we do is we present a business use case and a process automation solution. You can register and see all those great people that we have scheduled for the rest of the year at automationhour.com. And we also have a Trailblazer Community Salesforce Automation Hour.
Awesome. So a couple more resources for you. Trailhead, Trailhead, Trailhead. Check out these great Trailhead modules. They are worth it. All right, let's wrap up, but I'd love to answer a couple of questions. Also, there will be a GoToWebinar survey that pops up at the end of this. We want to know what you thought of this webinar. Please, please let us know. The slides and the recording will be available at that bit.ly link. All right, let me get into the questions. So what is the difference between custom metadata and custom settings? Why would we use custom metadata over custom settings? Classic question.
Okay, so custom settings and custom metadata types kind of do the same thing. There is one difference with custom settings is they have a hierarchy. So you could use custom settings to set permissions on a profile level or a user level. But for the most part, I've been having people use custom metadata type if they're not using the hierarchy piece, because again, the benefits of custom metadata type is that records are deployable.
Cool. There's another question about, let me ask this one. How about doing bulk editing or mass updating custom metadata types? And can you edit them via Apex or via UI?
So you could edit them in the setup UI in production. There is a tool, like a data loader tool for custom metadata types. I can find and we could share that out.
Great.
Afterwards. I have not actually used Apex, but we could also research that as well and get back to you.
Okay, sounds good. We are right at time. I know we did not get to as many of the questions as we could, but we're going to pop into the community here and start answering them. So thank you all very much for joining us today. We hope that you found today's webinar valuable. Again, slides and the recording will be available. So thank you, Jen Lee, for joining me today and joining all of us. Hope you all found this webinar super valuable. Thanks a lot and have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.